ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Singh, students, it's a great honour for us to be able to welcome Dr. Singh to come to New International School of Thailand today, in the first of what we hope will be a series of small-scale lectures and talks given by visiting academics and politicians to students of the international community to broaden their awareness and broaden their views and opinions and give them a better insight into how some of the true leaders of the world think about academics and political situations. It's my pleasure to call upon Sajini, the chair of the Secondary School Student Council, to say a few words welcoming Dr. Singh.
Dr. Karan Singh was born as heir to the state of Jammu and Kashmir and embarked in a political lifestyle at the early age of 18. In 1949, his father, Maharaja Hari Singh, appointed him regent at the intervention of Jawaharlal and Nehru, where he remained until 1952. He was elected Sadar-e-Riyasat from then forth till 1965, and was governor until 1967. Dr. Karan Singh was in 1967 inducted into the Union Cabinet and was the youngest person ever to become Central Cabinet Minister in India. He was then elected to Parliament. Dr. Karan Singh, a philosopher, environmentalist, statesman, politician, and so much more, is also the chairman of the Temple of Understanding, which is an international interfaith organization, president of the International Center for Science, Culture, and Consciousness, chairman of the Oroville Foundation, and member of the UNESCO Project on Universal Ethics. Today we have the honor and privilege of listening to Dr. Karan Singh himself, and for this we graciously thank him.
Headmaster, staff and students of the New International School of Thailand, Uwe Morovitz, who is the moving spirit behind the International Peace Foundation, and friends, it is always a tremendous pleasure and joy to meet with young people as I travel around the world, because the older people seem to have made a terrible mess, and the only hope of sorting things out lies with young people like you, who are now on the threshold of great things. Humanity today is at a very exciting juncture in its long and tortuous history on planet Earth. On the one hand, science and technology have given us tremendous power. In the last 2 or 3 decades, they have transformed human consciousness. We've broken the space barrier. We've reached the moon. We're reaching the planet. We're reaching out to the stars. There are breakthroughs in every field of science, whether it is astrophysics or cosmology, or whether it is microbiology, subatomic physics. All sorts of exciting things are happening. And we have for the first time the wisdom to create a sane and harmonious world. On the other hand, this very science has given terrible destructive power. One nuclear warhead today packs 1,000 times more power than the bombs that obliterated Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which you must have read about in your lessons. We were there, we remember, we were alive when this happened. And so you have these 2 roads opening up. I don't know how many of you know Robert Frost's poem called The Road Not Taken. Do you study that in your class? 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveller. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it went in the undergrowth, then took the other, as just as fair and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there at morning really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no stem had trodden black. Oh, I kept the one for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I should be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wooded eye. I took the one less travelled by, and that has been all the difference. There are the two roads opening out before us. One road is the road of the clash of civilizations. The other road is the road of the confluence of civilizations. The clash of civilizations, a brilliant thesis, argued by Samuel Huntington. I know the man well. He's done extraordinarily good work. But the basic presumption there is that civilizations cannot peacefully coexist. And those civilizations essentially are based upon religious and spiritual traditions. So he postulates an inevitable, inexorable clash of civilizations. On the other hand, there are philosophies, holistic philosophies. The International Foundation for Peace, or UNESCO, or the United Nations, or what we stand for is a confluence of cultures. In India, for example, we have all the great religions of the world. 4 of the world's great religions were born there: Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, and Sikhism. Another 5 came to us from West Asia: the religion of Zarathustra, prophet of Iran, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and the Baha'i faith. And 3 East Asian religions, Taoism, Shintoism, and Confucianism, are also beginning to come in. Now, we believe that it is possible for these different religious communities to coexist peacefully. And we also believe that it is only if there is a growth in the interfaith movement that this peaceful coexistence can be assured. The interfaith movement is a movement designed to bring together people of different faiths, of different cultures, of different languages, of different races, to bring them together in a harmonious dialogue. This international school, I'm sure, has people, as youngsters from many different cultures and many different religions. The interfaith movement began in 1893 in Chicago with the first World Parliament of Religions in 1893. Then in the 20th century, a large number of interfaith organizations came into being, including one called the Temple of Understanding, of which I am chairman worldwide. And we had a whole series of meetings. We met in Oxford, we met in Moscow, we met around the world. In 1993, 100 years after the first, there was a second World Parliament of Religions in Chicago. Then 1999, the third World Parliament in Cape Town. In 2000, there was an event in the United Nations. And 2004, this year in July, the fourth Parliament of the World's Religions will be held in Barcelona, Spain. Now, the basic theory of the interfaith movement can be summed up from a beautiful verse from the Rig Veda, which, as you know, is the oldest extant scripture. Ekam sat vipraha bahuda vadanti. The truth is one, the wise call it by many names. In other words, the divine is there, the divine light is there, but everybody can access it in a different way. All the great religions of the world speak of the light within. The Bible talks of the light that lighteth every man that cometh into the world. The Sufis talk of the Noor-e-Ilahi. The Sikhs talk of the Ek-Omkar. The Vedic seers speak of the light of the 1,000 suns. Vedaham etam purusham mahantam aditya varnam tamasa parasta. All religions seek to find the inner light. All religions look upon the divine as compassionate and merciful. The religion has played a very major role in human civilization. Much that is great: art, architecture, music, dance, spiritual texts and so on come from religion. And yet more people have been killed and massacred and murdered and persecuted in the name of religion than in any other name. That is because we claim the monopoly of truth. My young friends, remember, no religion has a monopoly of truth. All religions are different approaches to the same divine. How do we know? We are denizens of a tiny speck of dust in the cosmos. There are 1 billion suns in our galaxy alone, and there are billions of galaxies in the unbounded universe around us. How are we, tiny creatures on a speck of dust, to say that the illimitable power of the divine can appear only in this form and in this shape and in this time? It's prima facie unacceptable. We have to realize that the divine can manifest itself in many ways. The gods wear many faces, as the Greeks used to say. And therefore we must keep ourselves open. It is all right for us to say, I can say my path is the best path for the divine. I understand, fair enough. But I cannot therefore say that because you are not following my path, therefore you will be persecuted or bombed or terrorized or killed. That is not acceptable. So a basic feature of the global society that is emerging has to be religious tolerance, religious understanding, inter-religious harmony. And that is what the interfaith movement is all about. And that is what we are trying to do, traveling around the world. And it is young people like you, it is in the crucible of your minds and your hearts that the theory of the harmony of religions must be born. Do not get carried away by fundamentalists or fanatics or whatever religion they may be, who say there is only one true path and all the rest are non-believers. That is not acceptable. We are all human beings. Every human being encapsulates a spark of the divine. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshe tishtati, as the Gita says. And that spark of the divine, fanning that spark of the divine into the blazing fire of spiritual realization is the highest destiny of human beings, and that can be done not by any one religion, it can be done by the spiritual quest. Therefore, my young friends, remember, throughout your life, you are at the beginning of your life, you are living at an exciting moment in human history. As the poet says, bliss was it in that dawn to be alive, but to be young was very heavy. You are young, you have your whole lives in front of you. Don't allow your minds to be distorted by hatred, by fanaticism, by narrow-mindedness. Open your minds, open your heart. Let noble thoughts come to us from every side. Remember that photograph of planet Earth taken from outer space? That beautiful photograph that shows our planet as it really is. A tiny speck of light and life against the unending vastnesses of outer space. So beautiful and yet so fragile. That is Gaia, that is Bhavani Bharati, that is planet Earth, that is the mother that has nurtured us from unicellular organisms 4 billion years ago to where we are today. And human consciousness can break all barriers and move on to higher and higher reaches. Therefore, always remember throughout your life, keep your minds clear and sharp. Keep your hearts compassionate and caring. Care for the world, care for the planet, care for your fellow human beings, care for those you love, and care for your own inner development. If you do that, I am sure you will grow into integrated and holistic human beings in a sane and harmonious global society. Thank you. Yes, I love asking.
So students, if there's anyone who would like to ask a question or something, then please, Sajini would like to start the whole proceeding. So, Ms. Kim will bring round the microphone.
How does one, or how do we begin interfaith dialogue between two parties of different religions that have so much hatred for each other? Take, for example, the conflict between Muslims and Jews in Palestine and Israel. One of the reasons I believe they're fighting are because of their different faiths. They both believe the land belongs to them because of their faith. How do we then use their faiths to bring them together or create a synthesis of religious experience?
This is a very difficult one because the Jews and the Muslims have been, as you say, in a posture of enmity. I would say the first thing to do is if you have any Jewish friends, or any Jewish people, Jewish children studying here, Muslim children, let them sit together and try and understand what the problem is. This fight for land is obscene. I mean, if you look at Earth from outer space, you do not see any barriers. You do not see Palestine and Israel, you do not even see any countries, you just see a tiny speck. Ultimately, what happened in Europe? You read your history. France, Britain and Germany were at daggers drawn for 700 years. How many massacres took place? The 100 Years' War, the 30 Years' War, the Napoleonic Wars, the Wars of the Roses, the First World War, Second World War. They hated each other desperately. Today, you go to Europe, you can travel from Norway to Greece, and you can travel from Poland to Portugal without a passport. How do they manage that? Ultimately, they realize that to fight over Alsace-Lorraine or to fight over Trieste is no longer worth it. So the only way you can transcend these chronic problems is to see them in the broader picture. And I suggest that the first thing for young people to do, if you have people of different religions in this very school, should sit together and talk about what the problem is. Because a dialogue is the first step towards solving.
If you believe in the fight for all religions to be together harmoniously, I was just wondering, what's your opinion on Jacques Chirac's ideas of freedom from religion, where children such as ourselves are not allowed to physically express our religion with crosses, crucifixes, or Stars of David?
What's happening in France today? The banning of religious symbols, is that what you're saying? Well, I think that's going a bit too far, if you ask me. I mean, in India, we love wearing our religious symbols. The Sikhs wear their turbans, and I've got a religious symbol, I've got an Om Namah Shivaya bracelet, and somebody wears it. It doesn't really matter what you wear. You see, the point of the interfaith movement is not to denigrate religions. It is not to move away from religions. It is not to say that religion is not important. On the contrary, religion is important. What it says is that you may be wearing a crucifix, I may be wearing an Om Namah Shivaya bracelet, a Sikh may be wearing a kirpan and a turban. It doesn't matter. These are outer accoutrements. These do not deal with the heart of the spiritual tradition. And I think that it is going a little too far to ban people from wearing religious symbols. Personally, that would not be acceptable in India, certainly. Yes, you can't go around carrying huge swords and Sten guns and say, I'm a terrorist, this is my religion, therefore I'll go to school with Sten. That you can't do, obviously. Although some people may want to do that too. You have to have a dialogue with the US. You must remember that the United States government does not mean the United States. The United States is a great country with great people. It is true they have a very aggressive government at the present moment, with which a lot of people disagree. But that does not mean that the dialogue, in fact, the United States has been in the forefront of the interfaith dialogue for several decades. And there is a very strong peace movement in the United States. Not everybody has accepted President Bush's highly aggressive policies. Of course, we'll see now in November what happens in the election, but we must continue the dialogue in any case, even with the born-again Christians in the Bush administration.
In India and a lot of international schools, Indian students have usually been pressured by their family and their society about Hindu-Muslim relationships, Hindu-Muslim friendships, and a lot of things. And even though we're asked to open our minds to it nowadays, even in the future, if we were to use this sort of intellect and knowledge we gain out of it, there's always social pressure we get. And due to the social pressures, a lot of people have grown hatred. And how are we supposed to actually resolve anything if the problem starts in society itself?
Yes. Well, you see, the history of the Hindu-Muslim interaction in India has been 1,000 years old. Not all of it has been pleasant. The Muslims came to India in two different capacities. They came as invaders and There were terrible massacres and temples were broken, there's no doubt about it. They also came as Sufis who brought the message of love. In Ajmer Sharif, for example, the tomb of Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti, Khwaja Nizamuddin in Delhi and so on. So there are several aspects of the Hindu-Muslim relationship in India. As you know, in 47 the country was partitioned on the basis of religion more or less. But we still have more Muslims in India than in Pakistan. And therefore, it is very important for us in India to realize that the interfaith harmony is essential if India is to become a great nation. We have, as I said earlier, huge religious minorities. And if the whole religious thing becomes polarized, as it has become unfortunately in the last few years, then it will be a disaster for us. So despite social pressures, you're right, there are social pressures. But it is young people like you and your generation who have got to change those mores, those attitudes. You've got to stand up against those social pressures. You've got to try and educate your parents. You've got to try and say that we have studied in international school and there is no hatred there and that, sorry Dad, but you're on the wrong path. Say it politely, but say it clearly nonetheless.
Yeah. And you've seen the base religions that keep people apart?
Of course, that keep people apart.
Well, I mean, culture is not necessarily religion, right?
I agree. You know, when I was talking particularly about there is discrimination on the basis of religion, there is discrimination on the basis of race. Racial discrimination has been a terrible chapter in human history, which is not directly linked with religion, but it is there. There is discrimination on the basis of gender. In many countries, women have been grossly discriminated against, and they still are in many ways. There's discrimination on the basis of alternative sexuality. There's discrimination on the basis of all sorts of things, nationality. So you're quite right, religion is not the only factor. It is one of several factors. But because I'm dealing specifically on this trip with the interfaith movement, that is why I highlighted religion. But let me tell you, it is an important factor. It is a factor which cannot be underestimated. For example, the Soviet Union, for 70 years was under the rule of the Marxist-Leninist regime. My wife and I went to Moscow in the late 50s, and Khrushchev, about whom you may have read and heard, he gave a party for us in the Kremlin. And I asked him, I said, Mr. General Secretary, is it possible to be a believer as well as a member of the Soviet Union Communist Party? He said, no. We do respect faiths, but to be a member of the CPSU, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, you've got to be an atheist. Now, 70 years of a Marxist-Leninist atheist regime in Russia, Soviet Union. What happens? The moment the regime falls, there's an upsurge of religion here. The churches are full. I was there again in the year 1990. The churches are full to overflowing. In Mongolia, the Marxists had destroyed the Buddhist temples, killed the priests, burnt the scriptures. The moment the regime collapsed, the first thing they wanted was their religion back. We sent people from India with the religion, with the Shastra. So religion is very important. I'm not saying it is the only factor, but it is a significant factor in the inter-civilizational dialogue. Sorry, it's not working on my.
Well, we're moving into a world where youngsters are moving away from their faith and adopting an atheist approach to life. And again, in relation to what you just said, where do you think or how do you predict this will take us?
It is true that religion is losing a lot of its appeal. And there are many people now in the world, millions and millions, who do not believe in any religion at all, and they're also perfectly entitled not to believe. If you're entitled to believe, you're also entitled not to believe. The only thing I say is that spirituality rather than religion gives us the opportunity to go below the surface of life. You do not only skim over the surface of life, you dive deep into the depths of your own consciousness. The human consciousness is much more complex than people realize. It is not only a question of sleeping and getting up and eating and growing up and making lots of money and living happily ever after. There are deeper reaches of the human personality. And one thing that religion does or is supposed to do is to try and put you in touch with those deeper dimensions of the personality. And my only reason that I am not greatly enthused by atheism is that it rejects these possibilities. It rejects the possibilities of the higher consciousness. It rejects the possibilities of a deeper awareness. But of course, in a democratic world, if people choose not to believe in religion, it is their choice.
What do you feel are the biggest examples where interfaith dialogue has been successful?
Sorry?
What do you feel are the biggest examples where interfaith dialogue has been successful?
I can't find a single one yet. The fact of the matter is that it has not really been terribly successful so far. It is still a peripheral movement. It is like the environmental movement. You remember, environment was peripheral till the middle of the 20th century. Then it began moving into the center of consciousness. And then people did do something about it. Although there's been a lot of rollback also, Kyoto Protocol and so on. In interfaith also there have been, for example, the Northern Ireland problem was also, it was, although both are Christians, but it was Protestant-Catholic conflicts. There was some leeway was made there, and there are some good examples. I can't think of them at the moment. But the point really is that it is tremendously important to continue the effort. We cannot give up. We cannot say, okay, it doesn't work and therefore let's all wait till we get blown up by the latest atomic bombs. That we cannot do. We must work actively to prevent disaster. Now let me say a word about the Indo-Pakistan situation. Very recently there was a SARC meeting in Islamabad, and for the first time in half a century, there are real windows of opportunity opening out between India and Pakistan. And the Hindu-Muslim problem in the subcontinent very largely revolves around the conflict between India and Pakistan. So we must all work for that.
Ayatollah al-Sistani currently has great religious influence over the Shiites in Iraq. Do you think that this is something that is possibly dangerous, which could create
Sorry,
more...
could you repeat your question?
Yeah, Ayatollah al-Sistani.
Ayatollah who?
Al-Sistani.
Okay, there's so many of them I can never remember their names.
He has like a lot of control over the Shiite
Okay.
religious group in Iraq right now.
Is he the Iranian Ayatollah or is he the Iraqi Ayatollah?
I think it's the Iraqi.
Okay.
And do you think that this is something that is possibly dangerous, which should create more conflicts between the different religious groups?
Well, there is a lot of religious fervor in Iraq. Mind you, the Shias are in the majority in Iraq. And when they ask for a democratic election, and America is a great pioneer of democracy around the world, I presume that it is not unreasonable. But the problem with a lot of these religious leaders is they don't ask for democracy, they ask for theocracy. And theocracy, I'm afraid, is not something which is acceptable in this day and age. So I'm sure that this gentleman you mentioned has possibilities of creating problems, but he could also perhaps help to solve the problems if he were to look at it from a more enlightened viewpoint. What is the motto of this school? Does it have a motto? Anybody do marketing advisor, you don't know the motto of the school. You have to say, how are you going to market it if you don't know the motto?
Thank you, Dr. Singh. I wasn't sure whether you're asking me that question or one of the students. Master's students, of course, you may remember a secondary presentation last year. I referred to this symbol up there, the unity of parents, students and staff.
First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Watts for liaising with the Bridges International Peace Foundation for securing Dr. Singh and his wife to come here today. It's been a great pleasure and a great thrill. Dr. Singh has 2 presentations and lectures still to come at universities and a meeting at the Foreign Correspondence Club. So indeed, as an international school in Thailand, and as we see the leading international school in Thailand, we're delighted that our international baccalaureate students could hear your presentation. But I don't think it's just a presentation, it was your questions, the responses to the questions that you received, and I was delighted with the thought put into the questions and your often humorous responses. Your talk today was, of course, about religious understanding. But if I may take one quote that you had said there, and there's one word within this quote that I'd like to hear responses, not here, but as I see the Year 12 and 13 students outside, about one of the words, and quoting, you're imploring our students to keep minds and hearts open and let noble thoughts come inside. Now, I'd very much like to hear what our students' thoughts are about the word noble thoughts. Your thoughts to us today were very provoking, very insightful, very current, very topical, and you could tell the majority of the questions were around religion and religious uncertainty and peace in the school today. So on behalf of all at NIST, I'd actually like 2 very special teachers to actually present a small token of gift from NIST. Ms. Ritchie, Ms. Tara, are you actually here still at this stage? Dr. Singh, these are our 2 long-serving teachers at school, Hindi teachers. They've been with us for 10 years, we're in the 11th year now. And Miss Eagle's family actually comes from Kashmir, and she was so excited. And she has a chance to have a quick word to you at the end, talk to you about her family heritage there. So if Tara and Richie could come forward and present our gift of appreciation to Dr. Singh.
Okay, students, well done. Done their TOK essays. Opportunities to think about. Year 12s here. I assume all year 13s have done theirs, theory. There's an opportunity for some of you to think about some of the things that were said. It's obviously food for thought. And also an opportunity for you to go away and think about how you can put into practice the tolerance and the interfaith dialogue into your own lives. It's nice to see questions coming from your own point of view, talking about cultural pressures from mums and dads at home, and how do we implement that in our lives, what's our way forward, and being able to apply that to the way we live our lives is what's really important. That's why we want these speakers to come and talk to you, to give you ideas about how we can make the world a better place. I think all the adults in this room, I say adults, but all of us here will probably agree that we've made there's a mess of the world, really. And it's a lot of it, as teachers, some of the things that have gone on before are not the way we should continue in the world. We need to make some changes, and this is what we need to do. And that time's coming up very fast, both environmentally and from the point of view of, I think, world religions and conflict. We have to look at it and say, is this the right way forward? And even when there aren't wars, we have to be actively, as individuals, working towards peace, working on peace, not just seeing it as something that comes when there's no war. It's much more than that. And so, again, these people coming to talk should be hopefully opening your eyes to that. Also, before you go, there are more lecturers coming, your teachers, or Nobel Prize winners coming. Your teachers will be talking to you about it. There will be small groups of people with the opportunity to ask questions. In future, when you get the opportunity, you know someone's coming, do a little bit of research yourself to have a look at the type of questions that might actually get that little bit more out of the speaker and challenge them a little bit so you can actually see high intellect at work. Because that's important, because you're going to be going off to university soon. You want to be able to challenge your lecturers to give you more than just their normal run-of-the-mill speeches or lectures in the lecture theatres. So when you get tutorials, it's a great chance to think of high-powered questions. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed it. We will have, also said, there's another 5 or 6 Nobel laureates coming. Your teachers will be talking about those people, introducing them to you, and we do hope you will, we're going to expect you to come to them, and the teachers will help, will tell you when they're taking place. Well done, well behaved, very good audience, well done.